I'm going to give you just a little bit of context about my own journey. I was brought up in what could only be described as a dysfunctional and quite abusive family, but I didn't come into contact with psychiatric services till my late teens, when I was referred by a guidance teacher at school, by which time the damage was already done. Thereafter, I spent a 4-year stretch, as I like to call it, in hospital, and followed by 10 years of revolving door admissions, and then a further 10 years using community psychiatric services. And I attracted, so to speak, a dual diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder and borderline personality disorder, the latter of which was the more pernicious for me personally, because it was accompanied by intolerance and blame, as it so often is for people with that diagnosis. This made it very difficult for me to reach out for help when I was struggling, because I knew that I would be met with rejection and be left feeling quite humiliated. And so when on Hogmanay, sorry, I'm forgetting I'm speaking to mainly an English audience, on New Year's Eve 2000, the eve of the millennium, I was feeling very, very overwhelmed and distressed, hearing voices and feeling really quite suicidal. But still at that point I wanted help. But I knew I couldn't approach the hospital for help because of their treatment of me in the past. So I called the therapist, the private therapist I was working with at the time. And it was the only time I've ever called a therapist in crisis. And she recognised immediately the danger that I was in. And she did perhaps the kindest, perhaps the only thing that she could do in that situation, I don't know. She urged me to put down the phone and call the hospital immediately because she thought I needed to be admitted. Well, I knew then that the coffin of my fate was sealed. How could I turn to these people when I felt so frightened and vulnerable, and I knew the reaction that I would get? So I went to Edinburgh's most notorious suicide spot, a cliff which I later found out is 150 feet high, and I jumped off its edge. Miraculously I survived, but most people who attempt that don't survive it. And I believe that their deaths are precipitated by a system that punishes our pain and certainly fails to meet our needs. So it's very heartening then to come to an event like this today with like-minded people who also recognise the flaws in the system and the damage that it's done and the reforms that are needed. And lately I've been thinking of psychiatry as being a bit like an empire, and the history of empires teaches us that their average lifespan is around 250 years. So if we calculate back to the origins of psychiatry as a profession and the birth of the asylum, are we on the cusp of a revolution now in terms of how we think of and treat mental distress? I certainly hope so. And my next poem kind of brings that analogy in and points the way for the need for change. It's called Empire. The DSM is getting bigger, more audacious in its claims, colonising difference in its patriarchal sweep. Every human trait, a subject of disorder, to be subjugated to the will of doctors. Nothing that we say or do is normal anymore. In whose interests are the territories of the mind enslaved? Why give up imagination and dissent, the lush green spaces we inhabit when we're mad? A foreign power, alien and threatening, encroaches every corner of the globe, sanitising us with deference and complicity, that we too may be its agents as we silently retreat into the diagnostic ghettos where the natives are allowed to freely roam. One of the most glaring flaws in classifying human distress into categories of illness is that they are open to wide interpretation, and of course anything but objective. And that's one of the points that I think is well illustrated by this next poem, which was written by Sally about her experience of receiving labels. It's called No Apology in Pathology. They never say sorry when they get it wrong, even though you told them all along. You didn't quite agree, but technically that isn't disagreeing. Still compliant, just questioning, not defiant. 12 psychiatrists later, and a decade lost to medication and side effects, finally I am listened to, having evidence with detailed mood charts. It feels like respect, but instead a new diagnosis is given. It's not so much mood as behaviour-driven, personality disorder and borderline at that. What about bipolar? Do they overlap? They can coexist, but there's the matter of your manias. They're not quite long enough. So I'm a borderline bipolar. Can I come off my meds? A solemn expression followed by, I wouldn't recommend it. But I really want to. Can't we at least try it? So Epilin was the first to go, and signs of mania started to show, elation caused by the drug's withdrawal. So we slowed down the process to a gentler regime. Next to go was lamotrigine, a careful and cautious wean. 2 years later, I'm mood stabiliser free, and I've completed 3 years in therapy, in remission and recovery, and everyone is so proud of me. But that damn label is still stuck to me. There really is no apology in pathology.